Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome back to the GBC SPT page. My name is Devamata Das, and we're very happy to have with us today His Grace Vrsabhanu Prabhu. Welcome, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Devamata Prabhu.
My pranams. Anybody who appreciates the GBC SPT has to appreciate Vrsabhanu Prabhu because he's one of the devotees working behind the scenes actually every day. Some of us like to think that we're doing something every day, but he's actually doing something every day to help the effort go forward. And today he's filling in for a devotee that we had planned to share with us the glories of Gopal Bhatta Goswami for his disappearance day. And that devotee is not feeling well, so we asked the devotees to pray for the well-being of Jai Sacinandna Krsna Prabhu. But we also thank Vrsabhanu Prabhu for being such a gracious last-minute guest to share with us the glories of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And Vrsabhanu Prabhu himself, along with being dedicated to service, also is a Dambasi living in Sri Mayapur. And I've experienced him to be a very down-to-earth and gracious person, along with being very efficient, we could say, in the mundane realm, which doesn't always happen both in the devotee community, that somebody executes very well on one side and is also very faithful on the other. So I always enjoy Vrsabhanu Prabhu's association, and I'm looking forward to hearing from him today about Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Thank you, Prabhu. We'll turn it over to yourself.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Devamata Prabhu, and Hare Krishna to everyone.
Yeah.
SPT is scraping the barrels. They managed to grab me in the last minute. I'm excited to speak about Gopal Bhatta Goswami today, and we'll start with invocation and then dive straight into it. Om Jnana Dvarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshuranmalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatavini Shri Gopal Bhatta Goswami Ki Jai. So not much is spoken about Srila Gopal Bhatta Goswami in the Chaitanya Charitamrita or in the Gaura Nitai Dipika. But Narahari Sarakar has spoken about Gopal Bhatta Goswami in his Bhakti Ratnaka. So much of what I'm speaking about today would be from Bhakti Ratnaka. But to lead into Gopal Bhatta Goswami, I'd like to start with Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's travels through South India, because that is when we are introduced to Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So we are reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 9, text 79. Papanasane Vishnu Kaila Darshan Sri Ranga Kshetra Tabe Karila Gaman. Translation. After visiting the holy place named Shiva Kshetra, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arrived at Papanasana and there saw the temple of Lord Vishnu. Then he finally reached Sri Ranga Kshetra. So I'll just read a part of the purport from Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada says, Sri Ranga Kshetra, Sri Rangam, is a very famous place. It lies in the district of Tiruchirappalli, about 10 miles west of Kumbakonam and near the city of Tiruchirappalli on an island in the Kaveri River. Sri Rangam temple is the largest in India, and there are 7 walls and 7 roads surrounding it. So that's just a part of the purport from Srila Prabhupada. Text 80 of Madhya Lila, chapter 9. After bathing in the river Kaveri, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw the temple of Ranganath and offered his ardent prayers and obeisances. Thus he felt himself successful. In the temple of Ranganath, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chanted and danced in ecstatic love of Godhead. Seeing his performance, everyone was struck with wonder. A Vaishnava known as Venkata Bhatta then invited Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his home with great respect. So we'll find that very much when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to Jagannath Puri and danced in ecstasy in front of Lord Jagannath, and then he had fainted, then we find that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had come to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and picked him up and immediately recognized these ecstatic symptoms in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So similarly, whilst in South India, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu here in Rangam Kshetra is dancing in front of the Lord and starts exhibiting these wonderful symptoms of love of Godhead. And this is immediately recognized by the different devotees there, especially Venkata Bhatta. So Prabhupada also speaks a little bit about Venkata Bhatta, but for the sake of time, we'll just quickly read the translations by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. So Sri Venkata Bhatta took Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his home. After he washed the Lord's feet, all the members of his family drank the water. So this is culture, this is etiquette. When a sadhu comes to your home, you welcome them. In fact, Chanakya Pandit says, when a sadhu comes to your home unannounced, means it wasn't planned, then that person should be accepted as non-different than the Lord himself. So Chanakya Pandit says that. And in this case, it was actually the Lord himself, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who happened to be invited to Venkata Bhatta's home. So Venkata Bhatta said, "Please be merciful to me and stay at my house during Chaturmasya. Speak about Lord Krishna's pastimes and kindly deliver me by your mercy." So for those of you who don't live in India, Chaturmasya are the 4 months of the rainy season. And during this time, because it's raining practically all day, every day for that period of time, there's not much you can do. So the sadhus during Chaturmasya would normally go and stay in one place because they can't travel. And when they stay in one place, they will perform some sort of austerity, increase the chanting, etc. So in this case, during Chaturmasya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu happened to be at Ranga Kshetra, and so he was invited to the home of Venkata Bhatta, who comes in the Sri Ramanuja Sampradaya. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu remained at the house of Venkata Bhatta for 4 continuous months. The Lord passed these days in great happiness, enjoying the transcendental mellow of discussing Lord Krishna's pastimes. So we'll find that Venkata Bhatta, being a great devotee, also had 2 brothers, Trimala and Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati. And later on, we'll find that Prabodhananda Saraswati also becomes a great Acharya in our line of Gaudiya Vaisnava Acharyas. So it's also custom and culture that when a sadhu comes to your home, you would wash his feet. Why would you wash his feet? That's a question. So I remember a Prabhupada disciple was once saying that in the early days, in the 60s, early 70s, in the temples in America, sometimes guests would come and their hygienic standards would not be really that great. So as to ensure that the temple room does not stink, they would have some water there which they would use to wash the guests' feet so as not to make the temple room smell. So that's one reason why one would wash the feet. But there's a lot more to it than just cleanliness sake. It's also refreshing after a long sojourn. One washes the feet and it therefore refreshes the whole body. But more than that, when a sadhu comes to your home and you wash his feet, it's a sign of respect. It's a sign of humility. And by washing the feet, actually, it means you're worshipping the entire body because the feet represents the entire body of that personality. So Venkata Bhatta, being a very refined gentleman of great Vaishnava culture, they bathed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's feet took the water, sprinkled it on the heads of his family. And here comes in Gopal Bhatta, who's still a child, probably around 10 years old. And he takes some of this water and puts it in his mouth. He drinks some of this Charanamrita directly from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's feet. And Mahaprabhu was extremely affectionate to Gopal Bhatta Goswami, or Gopal Bhatta at that point. He would put him on his lap and he would talk to him. And during this 4 months, Gopal Bhatta, who was still a child, he got to listen to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu every single day. He got to listen to this wonderful, lively discussions that Gopal Bhatta, Venkata Bhatta and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were engaging in. And he also got to serve Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in some menial way. Now, as we know, if we've been fortunate enough to have some sadhus stay with us for a certain period of time, when we render service to them, it's actually very rewarding. It just feels so nice. If any of you have ever had a sadhu come and stay with you, like your spiritual master or a Siksha guru, you know what I'm talking about. It's just an amazing experience. And it's like you don't want the person to leave because you just bathe in that wonderful association. So that's what's happening here. For 4 months, can you imagine? For 4 months, you have Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's Krishna himself, who's love personified, in the home of Venkata Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta. So Gopal Bhatta was very fortunate in being able to serve the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and render some sort of menial service. And of course, he got to listen to the wonderful talks, as we mentioned before. So text 87 of Chaitanya Charitamrita. While there, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took his bath in the river Kaveri and visited the temple of Sri Ranga. Every day the Lord also danced in ecstasy. The beauty of Lord Chaitanya's body and his ecstatic love of God were witnessed by everyone. Many people used to come and see him, and as soon as they saw him, all their happiness, unhappiness, and distress vanished. All their unhappiness and distress vanished. Many hundreds of thousands of people from various countries came to see the Lord, and after seeing him, they all chanted the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Indeed, they did not chant anything but the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and all of them became Lord Krishna's devotees. Thus, the general populace was astonished. All the Vaishnava Brahmanas residing in Sri Rangashetra invited the Lord to their homes. Indeed, he had an invitation every day. Each day, the Lord was invited by a different Brahmana, but some of the Brahmanas did not get the opportunity to offer him lunch because a period of Chaturmasya came to an end. So, after this wonderful experience of 4 months with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chaturmasya ended, and now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu begged their permission to leave. And we'll find that at different times, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would do this. Even when he is in Jagannath Puri and he wanted to leave on his trip to South India, he begged the permission of the assembled Vaishnavas in Jagannath Puri. He did the same thing when he wanted to go to Vrindavan. He begged the permission of the Vaishnavas there, the intimate associates, like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Gopinath Acharya. And when you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, we see how the devotees tricked Mahaprabhu to stay longer. And when Mahaprabhu wanted to go to Vrindavan, by the trickery of the intimate associates, they kept Mahaprabhu there for another 2 years. And then eventually Mahaprabhu says, please, I really want to go to Vrindavan. You've kept me here for 2 years by your tricks. Now, please, let me go. Let me go to Vrindavan. So these are the loving reciprocations between the Lord and the devotees. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is God. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is Swarat. He is totally independent. He does not need to ask the permission of his devotees. But out of love for his devotees, because of a loving exchange with his devotees, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu begs their permission to leave. So he also begged the permission of Venkata Bhatta during this time, or at the end of the 4 months period. I really wanted to talk about that wonderful discussion between Venkata Bhatta and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about the superiority of Krishna's position over Narayan. But we have limited time, so I can't really get into that. But in a nutshell, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in a very joking manner, shows the superiority of Krishna over Narayan. And the way he does this is that he uses Lakshmi Devi as an example. He tells Venkata Bhatta that here's your Lakshmi Devi, the most chaste person, serving Lord Vishnu's lotus feet, yet she desires the association of Krishna. Now, why would she desire the association of Krishna? And more than that, even though she desired that association and she performed austerities for a long, long time, still she could not attain the lotus feet of Sri Krishna with all the austerity. And there's a wonderful discussion that goes between Venkata Bhatta and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where Mahaprabhu eventually shows how Krishna is so special that even Lakshmi Devi herself wants to get his association. The Vedas personified want to get his association. So everyone wants to get Krishna's association. So it's a wonderful discussion, which we don't really have time to discuss now, but hopefully at another time we can discuss it. So Venkata Bhatta begged Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to stay for another 2 weeks, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted the offer. He accepted the proposal to stay for another 2 weeks. So Gopal Bhatta wanted to go with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during this time. He wanted to leave with Mahaprabhu on his travel, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him not to come with him. He told him to stay and serve his parents with great devotees. And he told Gopal Bhatta that when his parents pass away, then he should go to Vrindavan and take shelter of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, and then read, collate, and study the scriptures of the Gaudiya Acharyas. So Gopal Bhatta at that point took initiation from Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati, who's his uncle. But Prabodhananda Saraswati also happens to be a very special personality. And here in Mayapur, we get to see Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati every day on the Radha Madhava altar, because Prabodhananda Saraswati is none other than Tunga Vidya Gopi. So Tunga Vidya Gopi, who's the first Gopi on Krishna's side, starting from the left, she appears as Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati in Chaitanya Leela. So that's another very interesting fact about this lineage that Gopal Bhatta comes in. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami, after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had left, Gopal Bhatta Goswami studied grammar and Sanskrit grammar, poetry, rhetoric, and he became quite expert in all the Vaishnava scriptures, beginning with Vedanta Sutra. And his uncle, Prabodhananda Saraswati, gave him great instructions on the different bhakti shastras. So he had very good guidance by Prabodhananda Saraswati. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, he took initiation from Prabodhananda Saraswati. And at some point when his parents were about to leave, Gopal Bhatta at this point initiated. He was told by his father that once he leaves, that Gopal Bhatta should go and serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He should go to Vrindavan and he should serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So after his parents had left, Gopal Bhatta then goes to Vrindavan from South India. And there in Vrindavan, he's taken under the wing and given shelter by Rupa and Sanatana Goswami. And Rupa and Sanatana Goswami then introduced Gopal Bhatta Goswami to the different great saints there, like Bhugarbha Goswami and Lokanath Goswami. Now, Bhugarbha and Lokanath Goswamis, they were in Vrindavan even before Rupa and Sanatana got there. They were instructed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to go and excavate the holy places of Vrindavan. So they were in Vrindavan even before Rupa and Sanatana had gotten there. So Rupa and Sanatana introduced Gopal Bhatta to Bhugarbha and Lokanath Goswami, and they also introduced him to Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Kashishwara Pandit, and other great devotees who were there in Vrindavan. So at this point, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu writes to Rupa Goswami inquiring about Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And he is then informed that Gopal Bhatta Goswami has arrived in Vrindavan and is in the association of Rupa and Sanatana. So then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sent some gifts for Gopal Bhatta Goswami. He sent him a choki. A choki is like a little seat that one would sit on. And he also sent him a kopan and Babaji attire. So he was basically instructing Gopal Bhatta Goswami to become a Babaji, and he sent the clothing. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave Gopal Bhatta Goswami 2 instructions. The first instruction was, don't become dependent on trying to secure a permanent place of residence. You much rather wander from forest to forest within the area of Braj. So don't become dependent on securing a permanent place of residence, rather wander from forest to forest in Braj. And the second instruction he gave Gopal Bhatta Goswami was to spend as much time assisting Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami in compiling the Vaishnava scriptures and studying them as well. So we'll discuss a little later about the different types of books which Gopal Bhatta Goswami was involved in compiling and in giving some commentaries on. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami is there in Vrindavan in this association of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami and all these other great acharyas. And at some point, Gopal Bhatta Goswami starts going around preaching, and he goes to a town called Devavandya Gram. And this is a town close to Haridwar. And when he got there, as is a custom, he was well received with great delight by the residents of this place. And whilst he was busy traveling, the one day a great storm came. And when the great storm came, then Gopal Bhatta Goswami did not have any shelter. So a Brahmana, who was a great devotee of Krishna, he saw Gopal Bhatta Goswami and invited him to please come and stay with them and take shelter at their home. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami went and stayed in the home of this Brahmana. And this Brahmana and his wife served Gopal Bhatta Goswami very nicely. And they then asked the sadhu, like as when a sadhu comes, you're asking for different blessings. So this household, a couple, did not have a son, and they wanted a son. So they asked Gopal Bhatta Goswami to please bless them. Please, can we bless us so we can have a son? So Gopal Bhatta Goswami said, yes, may you have a son who is a great devotee of Krishna. And then the Brahmana made a promise to Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And the promise was, I shall give you my first son to engage in the service of Krishna as you see fit. And we'll find a little later on that same boy who was then born, like 10 years later, he comes to Vrindavan and takes shelter of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So we'll speak a little bit about that in a few minutes. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he stayed in this place, Saharanapur, and he preached the holy name for some point, for a little while. And then before returning to Vrindavan, he decided to go to the Gandaki River. And normally you would go to the Gandaki River to collect Shalagram Shila. Shalagram Shila, as many of you may know, is a Shila, a stone that one worships in the mood of that being Vishnu, the stone being Vishnu. So he went to the Gandaki River. Now, just to give you some ideas to how far this place is, from Vrindavan to the Gandaki River is in Nepal. So as a crow flies, it's about 1,000 kilometers that Gopal Bhatta Goswami had traveled on foot. You know, there were no flights in those days. There were no trains. You generally would travel by foot. So he traveled 1,000 kilometers from Vrindavan all the way to Nepal, the Gandaki River in Nepal. And to get an idea as to how far 1,000 kilometers is, just from Kolkata to Mayapur, that drive is 130 kilometers. Or from Delhi to Vrindavan, it's 160 kilometers. So those are the distances. So this was 1,000 kilometers that Gopal Bhatta Goswami had traveled on foot. Nevertheless, he got to the Gandaki River in Nepal, and before trying to get some shilas from the river, you would take a bath and offer oblations. So he took his container of water to bathe himself, and when he stuck his container in and took out the water, 12 shilas appeared in the container. And this is when he wanted to take his bath. So he felt, well, he should take his bath first. So he dropped the shilas back in the water and scooped up water again. And the 12 shilas came back into his container. And then he poured it out and he scooped up again. And the third time, the 12 shilas come into his container. So then he figured, okay, 3 times. So obviously this is a message that it's a sign that I should take these shilas back with me. So these 12 shilas is what Gopal Bhatta Goswami took back with him, and he started worshipping these shilas. Now, the way it works with Shalagram Shila is that you've got so many, 12, 20, 50, some devotees have 100 or more. You would select a certain Shila, which becomes your main Istadev, and you would then worship that Shalagram Shila. So he chose one Shalagram Shila, Damodar, and he chose to worship this Shalagram Shila. So in Vrindavan, on Yushima Chaturdasi, a wealthy Vaishnava was busy going around giving charity to different sadhus. He was giving charity to different sadhus for their deities, clothing and crown and necklaces, the different kind of paraphernalia you would use for decorating the Archa Vigraha form, the form of the Lord. Now, Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis, they had their deities, Radha Madan Mohan, Radha Govindaji. But Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he had a Shila, and you can't really dress a Shila up very much due to the configuration of the Shila. So he prayed that, my Lord, I would like to worship you in this wonderful form, so that I can dress you up, etc. So the next day he went to take his bath in the Jamuna and perform his morning rituals, etc. And when he came back, he found that the deity, that Shalagram Shila, the main one which he worshipped, had taken a form. And this form happened to be the form of the deity we now know as Radharama. So Radharama is the most beautiful deity in Vrindavan, one of the most popular temples in Braj. And Srila Prabhupada really appreciated the standard of worship in Radharaman. And if any of you have not seen Radharaman, then you're definitely missing out on a wonderful darshan. Please go and do an internet search on Radharaman, and you will see a beautiful pictures of Radharaman in his beautiful threefold bending form. And it's understood that Radharaman has all these wonderful features of the different deities in Vrindavan, like Radha Madan Mohan, Radha Govinda, and Radha Gopinath. And it's understood that Radharaman has the beautiful features of all three of these main deities in Vrindavan. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami started worshipping Radharaman in this wonderful form. And they became very attached to Radharaman. But something was troubling him. His father had instructed him to serve Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And now he's serving Radharaman, and he felt that he's not serving Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So what to do? So Radharaman resolved the problem. What Radharaman did was, they appeared to him as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They appeared in this Gaura form. And then they changed from Gaura, he changed back into Radharaman. So in this way, Gopal Bhatta Goswami could understand that Radharaman were non-different from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And at least he was satisfied that he was now worshipping both Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his Istadeva Radharaman. So another interesting point is that in those days, especially before the temples were constructed, before they had high walls and security doors and all that fancy setup for the deities, the deities were generally kept by the different sadhakas, by the different sadhus. They would sometimes carry them around their shoulders. And then at night, they would need to put them somewhere safe. So what they would do is they would put the deities in a boat, and then they would float the boat to the middle of a lake. And in this way, the deities would be safe from dacoits, from robbers, as well as safe from wild animals, because it was a jungle at that time. Vrindavan was a jungle. And of course, there were dacoits always wanting to steal the deities and the deities' jewelry. So you'll find that today as well, in the treasury of Radharaman, they've got bows and arrows that some of these Goswamis would keep with them and guard these deities who were floating in the lake. So the Goswamis would stay on the shore of the lake, and they'd have the bow and arrows to protect the deities. So the treasury in Radharaman temple actually has some samples of the bow and arrows that were used at that time. And that treasury of Radharaman also has that choki, which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sent for Gopal Bhatta Goswami, as well as that dhoti and the clothing which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sent for Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And those are displayed on the appearance day of Radharaman, as well as on Gopuni. So if you ever go to Radharaman on those days, you may get the opportunity to see the bows and arrows that we used to protect the deities, as well as the dhoti and the choki that Mahaprabhu had given Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So as I mentioned a little earlier on, that house that Gopal Bhatta had visited, that Grihastha couple had promised their son. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami was getting quite old at this point. When he passed away, he was around 70 or 80 years of age. So he had to make some arrangement to take care of the deities of Radharaman. So this boy, appeared the one day, and Gopal Bhatta asked him, well, who are you? And he says, well, I'm Gopinath, and I'm the one who was promised to you. And so I've come to serve you and serve the deities. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami then engaged Gopinath in the service of Radharaman. And in order to continue the worship, he instructed he instructed Gopinath to get married and have children who then can take care of Radharaman. But Gopinath didn't want to get married. And in the third canto of Bhagavatam, you'll read that one of the instructions that you can ignore from the spiritual master is that the spiritual master tells you to get married. So he told Gopal Bhatta Goswami wanted Gopinath to get married, and Gopinath said, no, I want to remain a brahmachari. But he says, my younger brother has sons, and they can therefore take care of the deities upon my death. So it's understood that Gopinath's younger brother had sons. His younger brother was Damodar Das, and he had three sons, Harinath, Mathuranath, Harinam, and they became the custodians of Radharaman. And today, the management of of Radharaman Temple, those managers come 17 generations down from these caretakers from Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So they can be traced back 17 generations there. So we've only got like 3 minutes left, so I'm going to speed through a few books that Gopal Bhatta Goswami had written. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him to write a book on guiding Grihasthas. So he wrote the Satkriya Dipika, which deals with different purificatory samskars for Grihasthas, like first grain ceremony and hair cutting, etc. Gopal Bhatta Goswami also wrote Samskara Dipika, which applies to sannyasis, and he wrote many, many other books. So quickly to speed ahead, let's just see. Right, so Srinivas Acharya now comes into the scene. Srinivas Acharya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared to him in a dream and told him that you should take initiation from Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So Srinivas Acharya, as we know, he went to take the association of Gadadhar Pandit, and he wanted to learn Bhagavatam from Gadadhar Pandit. But when he got to Puri, Gadadhar Pandit had already left. So he came to Vrindavan to take the association of Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis, but they had left as well. So he then took shelter of Jiva Goswami, who then took him to Gopal Bhatta Goswami, and Gopal Bhatta Goswami subsequently initiated Srinivas Acharya. So to speed ahead, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who is he in Krishna Lila, in Gaura Nitai Dipika, Kavikanapur says, quote, in my opinion, that person who in Vrindavan was Ananga Manjari is now Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Some authorities, however, have given the opinion that he was Guna Manjari. So Guna Manjari is the ontological position of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. He's an intimate associate of Sri Radha and Krishna. And in the northeastern part of Sri Champakulata's Kunj lies a beautiful Gunananda Prada Kunj, where Sri Guna Manjari always resides. Now I'll read a beautiful prayer written by Srinivas Acharya to conclude. This is a prayer by Srinivas Acharya to Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Srinivas Acharya himself is Mani Manjari. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami had revealed to Srinivas Acharya that he is Mani Manjari. So there's a prayer. O Guna Manjari, the embodiment of divine lives, please listen to my prayer. As I ponder upon your countless qualities, my mind simply becomes enchanted by you. O Hari, when will that auspicious day be mine? O Guna Manjari, when will I be able to achieve the treasure of serving the youth couple along with you? Seeing me as a distressed soul, please constantly bestow your mercy upon me. Due to your own magnanimous nature, please fulfill my desire. Besides you, who, like the water-laden cloud of the monsoon, will quench my thirst. You are undoubtedly the hope for the hopeless. In my heart, I am completely convinced about that. I beg you to kindly look upon me with your tender eyes shining with sympathy. Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami Ki Jai. So, on this very auspicious appearance of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, we can pray to him for his special mercy. And by thinking of these great souls, we get their mercy. And hopefully, we will be able to serve Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission under the guidance of Srila Prabhupada and following in the footsteps of great devotees like Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So nice to fit it in just under 41 minutes.
Thank you, Vrsabhanu Prabhu. That was beautiful, actually. I was
Thank you.
very, very lucid tapestry of the timeline of Gopal Bhatta Goswami's life as we generally understand it. And I think you gave some nice indications there for devotees to explore further if any particular section intrigued them. But you gave a beautiful overview.
Well, I mean, it's said in Bhaktivedanta that some may describe some of Gopal Bhatta Goswami's glories, but no one can describe them all. So, in 40 minutes, we really packed as much as we could, but there's so much more that can be spoken. So,
yeah, thank you for giving us that indication. That was very exciting. And thank you, everyone who joined us live. And of course, if you haven't already, please do subscribe and watch the channel as we bring you more glorifications of wonderful Acharyas by wonderful devotees like His Grace Vrsabhanu Prabhu. Prabhu, thanks again for jumping in so last minute.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Exciting, and hopefully we'll sneak you back in for some batas later.
Yeah, if you're really desperate, yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hari Hari,
Gopal Bhatta Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Ki Jai, Hare Krishna.